Hello and welcome to the Executive Pill, the podcast where brilliant leaders from every corner of the world share their secrets to help you lead smarter, influence better, and succeed faster. Think of it as the cheat code to navigating leadership with clarity and confidence. I'm your host, Alex D. Tremble, CEO of GPS Leadership Solutions. Over the past decade, I've had the privilege of helping executives at Fortune 500 to federal agencies navigate leadership, influence, and culture. This podcast is your shortcut to learning what works from the best of the best. And I promise you this, what you're about to hear today is not theory. It's proven strategies that you can use today. And before we jump in, here's a tiny request that I promise you has a massive ripple effect. Please hit that like button. Why? Because, one, I've asked, but two, because in the attention economy, your click is the fuel that powers life-changing ideas to reach more people. You're not just liking, you're literally leading a movement. Pretty powerful, right? So thank you for doing that. Now, let's make today extraordinary. Today, I'm joined by a guest whose wisdom could quite literally change how you think, how you work, and how you lead. So without further ado, can I say today is a good day? Today, we have with us the amazing Mr. Kevin Sligh. See, Kevin currently serves as the founder and CEO of Promethean Global Consulting Group, where he leverages his over 25 years of industry experience across multiple sectors, including oil and gas, offshore wind, carbon sequestration, and emergency management to help organizations reach their goals. Specifically, his experience lies in developing mission-centric strategies that drive sustainable growth, foster collaboration among executive teams, and solve complex problems and challenges. He serves on a number of board positions, and prior to this role, he served as the Senate-confirmed Director of the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Enforcement within the U.S. Department of the Interior. In this role, he led America's offshore wind market business, which is freaking amazing, right? Look, honestly, his resume goes on, and I could keep reading, but then we wouldn't have any time to ask him any questions. So without further ado, how are you doing today, kind sir?
Hey, I'm Alex. I'm doing great. I do want to just make one minor correction, not non-Senate confirmed, but I did have to go through 7 different interviews, all the way from the White House PPO up to the Secretary of Interior. So it felt like Senate confirmed.
Well, this is actually the perfect way to start this episode, because one of my coaching clients is a very senior level official within, the outgoing now White House, actually, and was being approached and headhunted for a very significant position and had to go through literally 7 different interviews. Now, I'd like to share, because I'm sure not all of our guests have been through that many interviews. What do you feel the process is like, and why do you think it's even necessary to go through that many layers for an opportunity?
Well, yeah, I think that's a great question, and it really revolves around, especially if you're looking at a political position within an administration, to really understand the process from whether it's a White House position or a Fortune 500. They want to make sure they're making the right decision, and they want to get the right people in front of you to have that conversation. And let's just be honest, you get to that level of interviews for opportunities at that level. They want to make sure that you are a fit. So they break it into different opportunities where you sit down, whether it's with a group of 3 or 4 other folks that are asking questions and trying to really figure out, your level of this executive decision making, or what makes you tick, or individual interviews to really understand and trust and believe. When I went through those 7 interviews, there were more, meetings that were happening behind the scenes where they were comparing notes to really see, because I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only person that had made it to that level, to say, who's the best fit?
Mm-hmm.
Who do we as an executive team feel as though out of these three candidates would make the best fit for this pretty senior role within any organization, whether it's private sector or public sector?
I think so. I'm in alignment with you. So this was a private sector job that this person was applying for, and the challenge this person was having was, why is it so many interviews? Why is it so hard? And eventually, unfortunately, they didn't get the role, and they were like, well, what do you mean I didn't get the role? I mean, I'm qualified. I have all these years of experience. And what I shared with this individual was, at that level, everyone's got the experience. Like if you're being considered for this opportunity, you have the experience, you have the resume. It really is about that fit. That are you going to gel well with our team personality wise? Do you have things in the closet that we should know about? Like, it's all of that stuff. I mean, would you agree with that?
Oh, Alex, I totally 100% agree with that. They want to put you in the situations where they relax you. They see if the inner self comes out, because let's be honest, everybody always say, you have your home mask, you have your work mask, and then you have your friend mask. I'm just being completely honest. And they want to see what your work mask looks like, and they want to put you in a situation to understand what your other mask may look like, when you deal with your family at home. So they'll ask questions, leading questions about, your family life. What are your hobbies? What are your pursuits? And then, they'll try to really understand what really makes you tick from a work perspective to see how you would interact. And the questions may be different. They may come off the cuff, and they're just trying to really relax you to make sure that you're not this, what they saw before they actually met you, whether or not it's in person or on screen or virtual interview. Who is Kevin Sligh? What really makes him tick? Does he understand our ethics? Does he understand our code of conduct? Can we have confident conversations where, things won't be, revealed that don't need to be revealed, especially when you talk about private sector and profit and loss statements? Can you keep, for the lack of a better term, can you keep things close hold? So I think the interview process is built where the stress is there, but it almost, you got to just think like, well, if I already had the job, how would I have the conversation with this person so they can really see who I am?
So two things. Again, you said so much, so thank you. You two things. So one, I think this is why I don't go into interviews nervous. I haven't went into an interview nervous since I was probably in college. And I said it to say, the way I approach interviews and these opportunities is, I'm going to give my best, period. I'm going to give my best. If that's not enough, or if I'm not the right fit, then that's probably best for both of us, right? And if you are going for these opportunities, again, if you're at these super senior levels, again, you're probably skilled. Like, you probably got there for a reason. And if you don't get that particular opportunity, yes, you can probably refine your interview skills a little bit. Yeah, you can maybe get some more experience and so on and so forth. But if it's about fit, then you not being somewhere may be what's best for both of you. So I guess I encourage people not to take those too hard, and maybe go find those spots and those places where your fit is already aligned. Like, if you have connections, relationship, network, they know who you are already. So when they approach you, they say, oh yeah, his personality is already a fit with us. So it's really about the qualifications piece, which you already have anyways.
Yeah, totally agree, Alex. It really comes down to, I used to get really, really intimidated, public speaking, interviews, so much to the point where, I don't even want to say what I used to do to just make sure I could make it through. But now I kind of like look at it as an opportunity to really just have a conversation. And there's a difference. It's really about not being arrogant, but I think the best way to say it is, is that realize that it's a two-way street, like you said. You should be interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you, to see if they are a fit for you and what you have going on in your life. So I think what you're saying aligns 110% with how I approach, taking opportunities and looking at the fact that it's a two-way street. So it's a little bit of making sure you don't come off like, okay, I already got this job, with a little bit of arrogance, but the arrogance should be replaced with a little bit of confidence to say, I could be sitting in this role within the next 3 weeks. What am I going to do when I sit in this role? What are the answers that I'm going to provide? What are the recommendations, the courses of action? Whereas you don't come off arrogant, but you come off confident, and they can see the true way that you would interact with them should you become a colleague.
Question, again, because you have served in executive leadership positions and you have served in executive leadership positions. And I said to say there are levels. There are, more senior level executives and junior level executives and entry-level executives. What have you found to be different at the different levels as you've progressed up the ranks?
So I would say some of the differences are, some positions could be really focused on mission or operations. Some of the positions can then get, as you get more into the C-suite, senior C-suite level, really could be focused on, brand and brand messaging and articulating, what the strategic goals and values of the organization. And I'll give you an example. From an operational standpoint, when I was at the National Security Council or the White House supporting the president, at one point it was really not outward focused as much, but it also did deal from an interagency perspective with all of the departments and agencies within the federal government. And it was more policy related. But then when something bad happens, because it's always something bad will happen, it came down to really getting the mission done. And then having those interpersonal relationships that you built, that short amount of time that you may be over there, to really try to focus on what the president's goals and values are, to make sure, he or she gets what they need. Now, when you get to a more senior level, meaning, if you're a director or, cabinet level secretary, it really becomes, you have a whole team behind you that is doing the majority of the work. So I always say and tell folks that, work with me, that I support you. You guys do the majority of the work. I'm just the representative to make sure I'm a key decision maker. Let's get that right. From a strategic perspective, there's some decisions that will, your team will put in front of you. But at the very least, I am the real representative of the bureau, the agency, or the department that requires a team of folks that will support you to get your mission done. And I tend to focus on, and you'll hear about it towards the end, is people first. People first. You can't do any of the work, whether or not it's private sector or public sector, without the team that is the ones that are actually doing the true work behind the scenes. So one of the most influential jobs and goals that you have is to take care of the folks that are working with you to get the mission done. If you take care of them, they will take care of the mission. Hence, they will take care of you.
Well, you mentioned people. I guess one of the big challenges that, or one of the most identified challenges by the organizations that come to us to kind of help them with their team building and whatnot, is that executive leaders say, I'm busy. I have so much on my plate, but my team keeps coming to me for all the decisions. They need me to weigh in on everything. How did you go about creating more proactive thinkers in your team, so everyone isn't coming to you all the time for you to make a decision, for you to come up with the solution, so on and so forth?
Yeah, my leadership style is a little bit different. I would say, the initial, you have direct reports. When I sit down with my direct reports, when I get to learn them, is I always start the conversation off from an entrepreneurial standpoint. I say, hey, you're a part of a larger organization here. Whatever you own, look at it from an entrepreneurial standpoint. This is you're the CEO. There's some things that I'm going to give you, and I hate to go back to military parlance, but critical information requirements that I'm going to need. These are levels of information before you get there. Like, yeah, let's have a conversation before you make that decision. But some things don't always need to come to the top to be able to execute. As long as I, as the senior executive or CEO, give strategic guidance, whether it be an annual business plan or 5-year strategic plan, as long as you can point back to the goals that are in that strategic plan that are like actionable and you're working towards it, it's probably going to not be a big issue. As long as you meet my critical information requirements and come back to me and say, hey, Kevin, I have XYZ. I want to make sure I make some adequate recommendations, because I think that's the critical piece when you talk about leaders always you're being presented with decisions. I would actually flip it a little bit and say, what I'm looking for to build someone or to build a team is, because we're always going to be replaced, is I need people that support me that are making recommendations. That means they're doing active thoughts and saying, if I was in Kevin's shoes, what would I have wanted my team or my staff to really think through the problem set to say, hey, I'm going to put some courses of action in front of you to give you a choice on your decision, but here are my recommendations.
Couldn't agree with you more. Again, you've said so much in that. I'm going to try to work backwards. One, and this is funny because this is not only for direct reports, it's not only for people who are at the senior leadership level or lower. This is for executives too. Like, for you to always remember that it's a great rule that my old boss taught me. Don't bring him problems. Always bring solutions, right? So what we always teach in our courses and our workshops is at least come up with 3 potential ways forward. When you have a problem, come up with 3 potential ways forward. Have thought through why you decided these 3, and then you need to pick one that you think of the 3. I think this is the best approach, and this is the reasons why. And maybe your boss, supervisor says, yeah, actually I like decision 2, or maybe let's try something else. But coming to them with a solution and an actual recommendation is, one, it's great for them because they don't have to, you're adding another thing to their plate. But also it helps you. It helps you think through and prepare for that next role. So I love what you said about that. I love what you said about if you want people to ultimately make these decisions, it's not about just telling them, okay, make some decisions. No, it's about providing them with some parameters, right? Saying, hey, look, this is the mission. This is where we're heading. These are the outcomes we're looking for. Here's our budgets. Like, providing them with those parameters so they can make educated decisions versus coming to you with wild stuff. And then you keep having to say no. And now they're getting gun shy. And the last piece you talked about, I want to hit on really quickly, is ultimately it always generally comes down to trust. Have you established trust within your team, within your organization, that people say, hey, look, if I present something, is he going to scream at me, or is she going to scream at me because it was right, because it's wrong? Are they going to take credit for it? Are they going to, if all those things, if you have trust issues within your organization, the likelihood that people are going to be proactive is just slim, because they're CYA and they're covering their butt.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I can even do what you said. I can go back to that the interview process that you asked about earlier, Alex. Sitting down with 7 interviews, it was to build the trust. It was to build the trust that was necessary that you can do, and that goes from subordinate to senior, and then when you sit down with your direct reports or others in your organization, you're building trust. And then you're also wanting to make sure, as folks go through that entrepreneurial spirit to own their particular portfolio, are they doing a due diligence to really think about this problem set? Are they using the parameters that I've given them to be able to make solid recommendations moving forward? And if there's things that at their level that they don't need to elevate, to my level to make sure that, my calendar doesn't get overbooked. That's great. Totally understand it, because I've given you the ability I've delegated some things and give you the ability to make the right decisions in support of the organization. But for those things that require that you elevate them to my level, make sure you're bringing me solid recommendations and that you show that you've done your due diligence, that I feel comfortable, that I can trust what you are bringing to me is the potential answers for me to decide to then make the next move.
I love it. I love it. I like to, if it's okay, bounce back to that interview question, because you brought it up again, and ask you how many, I hope it's not too intrusive, but how many jobs of the last, 10 years, whatever, do you think you honestly got because you saw the position online and you submitted your resume? Like, was it just the...
It really doesn't happen that way, Alex. It really comes down to, like I said, I'll talk about this towards the end. It's advocacy. The jobs that I've gotten in a roundabout way, you hear about them. People hear about you. Somebody makes a recommendation behind the scenes, and they'll get in touch and say, have you thought about this? They make the connection. You sit down and have coffee. And then when you go through the whole process, then they'll say, well, we need you to apply for the position. You need to go to this website. And so if you're going for positions that I don't want to say are non-executive or, at a lower tier, maybe going in and putting in an application and shooting things out from a scatter shot perspective may work, and that may be a little bit with USA Jobs and folks can navigate that process. But when you're truly thinking about the more senior positions, they come with like recommendations and folks that are being asked, like, who do you think would be good for this position? And people get recommended, they get advocated for, and then they get invited in to have the conversation. But ultimately at the end, it's an opportunity for that organization to really, ask folks that they trust in the world of work to say, who do you think would be good for this position? And then they do open it up to outside competition. But for the most part, I don't want to say that the job is already won, but, it's your opportunity to showcase your skill set and your knowledge and your abilities to be able to execute at that level.
Well, I'm going to echo you really quickly. And those of you who've already read not my last book, the one before, which was not reaching senior leadership. It was the, relationships at work. I cite research in there. It says like 80% of opportunities are actually gained via relationship. 80%. So yeah, you can definitely shoot your shot via monster.com or something like that. But the odds are not in your favor, I would say. And
totally agree. And so, but I will say, going that route, because it's been a while since I've had to do that, there's nothing wrong with that either, because with practice, you get better at, applying for, going through the interview process, and then ultimately sitting down and taking a look at maybe a few offers that may interest you. I'm not saying, hey, the odds are stacked against you completely. It's just when you're looking at the top of a pyramid and how it's really set up, the opportunities are much less. And they're looking for, from a meritocracy standpoint, as the word of today, meritocracy standpoint, and who the best of the best is, they're relying a lot on trust in their network to say, who do you recommend who could be a good fit. My apologies.
No, I mean, because again, that last thing you just said is because, again, it all comes back to trust. And look at it logically. Do I trust the resume that I received from some person, unnamed person, or do I trust the referral from the person who I know I trust? I trust their judgment. Maybe I've worked with them for years. Like there's some weight there. And again, not saying this right or wrong, but we're saying what is. And it's funny because I was actually working with one of my other coaching clients they found themselves in a precarious situation because they had someone internal who they knew they wanted, and they told that person, "Hey, look, I got this opportunity for you. I'm gonna get you in this role," and so on and so forth. We gotta open it up for everybody. And fortunately or unfortunately, there was a rock star that came through that application process, and they got themselves in a very precarious situation because they'd already promised the role. And that was kind of, Kevin, what I was talking about. Like with Kevin, you were saying, like, yes, there's still opportunity. There's absolutely still a chance that you can get it. Again, probability is lower, but from a leadership standpoint, I just always recommend all leaders, even if you do have someone who you see for a particular role, I just never tell people to say, you got it. Always, hey, I encourage you to apply. It's going to be open. You'd be great in this position. But don't tell people, because when you get your expectations up, now you got a situation potentially with an EEO or some sort of HR issue because they said, oh, well, you promised me this. Now is the whole hiring process not fair? Like, just don't do that.
Yeah, totally agree, Alex. You want to keep people to where they're, especially, there's like succession planning going on. You want to keep them fresh and I don't want to say on edge, but it's that critical line between arrogance, I got this, to like confidence, like I'm going to show them that this is the right role for me and I'm the right person to fulfill that role. And like you said, you don't want to get into an HR position where you've indicated or, verbally or in writing stated something that you can't follow up on, because I will tell you, I always would encourage folks to, open it up for fair and open competition, because you may have that rock star that comes through and like, wow, this is like the perfect person for this job. Not to say the other person is not, but we gotta be fair to the process and say, from a meritocracy perspective, we have to like hire this person because they went through the process and they are the right fit. Yeah. So I totally agree.
Well, I want to ask you another question, but I want to slide one more question in. You talked about how, it's been because of the connections, the relationships, the recommendations that you've been able to excel to the level you have. Obviously, you're qualified, you're smart, and all those things, but it's also those recommendations and so on and so forth. I'd like to know if you would share with us, how do you now, because you're still making waves wherever you're going, having significant impact, how do you spend your time building connections with people, and how do you know who to build connections with?
So I would have to say it really comes down to, most people would say networking. To me, networking infers someone is giving and someone is getting something. I would actually, probably put it in the basket of relationship building. When you truly meet someone from the very beginning, it's like, well, you may need me, but I'm really not looking for anything. I just want to build a relationship to understand what your key concerns are, what your pain points, what your challenges are, what are your good things that you could recommend to me to be a better, executive myself. And at the end of the day, what then naturally occurs is someone will say, well, hey, Kevin, this is opportunity here. And you can be like, oh, man, I know the perfect person for that. I truly understand, that this game is all about relationship building and cultivating those relationships over time and not letting them, wither on the vine. You have to be deliberate. You have to reach out every once in a while to let folks know. I mean, that's the power of LinkedIn. I mean, when you look at it from a global perspective, is what LinkedIn is really a huge relationship platform that allows you to leverage that network, on whatever cause or opportunity that may be coming up. It allows you to connect with so many more people, and then to have the conversations wrapped around whatever the issue is or whatever the need is. And then, who knows, it may be beneficial for you. It may be beneficial for them and not beneficial for you. And that's okay. It may be beneficial for both parties or both entities. But at the end of the day, and I'll put it in, a little bit of parlance from my perspective as a crisis manager, emergency management leader type person. You never want to get to the bad day and walk in and hand out a business card and say, hey, I'm Kevin Sligh and I come from I'm going to save you place. You want to have a relationship. You want to participate in the planning meetings. You want to build relationships so when the real bad day occurs, it's like, okay, I know what Kevin offers and brings, and I know what I can really carve out for him. And then that's one less thing that me as the leader, the top, I don't have to worry about. I can delegate, inform and say, Kevin, go do good things. Here's your budget. Here's your authority. Here's your resources. And that's one less thing I have to worry about, because what they say is, and I'm not a huge leadership. It may sound like I'm a leadership type person, but I don't read a whole lot of books on it. But they say that, at any given time, the true top of the leadership chain really only knows 7% of what's going on in the whole organization. There is a whole 93% of day-to-day work that I don't get involved in. I don't have a need to get involved in because I trust the leaders that are below me to execute on the mission and the strategic vision.
Again, 100% alignment. Can I push us to go a step further in that? How do you talked about the building relationships, and the question then becomes, who do you spend your time building relationships with? Now, I know the popular answer is everyone, but honestly, if you were to go to Starbucks and sit in there all day, you could try to build a relationship with everyone, and that may or may not actually have an impact on the role and the business that you have. So I always tell everyone, my wife and I have been together for 17 years now. 17 years. If I didn't prioritize spending time with her over the barista at the Starbucks, we would not be together for 17 years. As Kevin, I would assume that you had to prioritize building connections, relationship with people in certain positions and certain organizations to make sure that if something happened, you had that connection. How do you go about deciding where to delegate your energy and time when building relationships, given that you have all these other things you have to do too?
Wow, that's a good question. I've been lucky to have the innate ability to recognize, when relationships are kind of critical. And then also, especially if someone reaches out and they're like, hey, I've seen your history, your background. I would love if you would mentor me. So there's opportunities to mentor others. There's also opportunities to understand, as I would give you an example, if you're moving into new work, you can't be the subject matter expert on everything. So you have to really leverage your I won't say your core constituency, but your colleagues that may be in the same world of work. You also can join groups and also learn how to build relationships with folks that are maybe on the next rung up, so they can, look for opportunities, whether through intentional means or by happenstance means. So, yeah, it would be kind of hard to sit in a Starbucks and just really just try to meet everyone. But there are opportunities when you come across people that have like-minded values and like-minded work that will provide opportunities that you would never have seen had you just come in and did your work and not focused on the really the most important piece of it is people.
Yeah.
If you recognize that people are the most important resource to do work or get work done, you innately figure out how to build those relationships and which ones to prioritize and others not to prioritize as much.
Is it this innate ability, or is it your intentional nature about building connections? Is that what led you to meet the people that you spoke to, that you learned about in your most recent book, actually profiling a character, Black excellence in the Coast Guard? Was it your one, how did you go about even identifying these people when you wrote this freaking amazing book?
Yeah, I would say, from the perspective, and let me just give you a real quick down and dirty on the background of the book.
Yeah.
There was a core constituency within the Coast Guard that recognized Coast Guard's not a huge service, especially when it comes down to, certain people may get to a unit and be the only. No one likes to be the only one of anything. And you can flip it and say, if a majority person came, they wouldn't like being the only one. So we had to, really take an opportunity to show through this book that we may have shown up to our unit, our work, and for the first 2 or 3 years, we were the only person that looked like us, talked like us, felt like us. And then as you grow within that organization, you assimilate, you become a part of a larger team to where being the only doesn't really matter. It's really being a part of the team. But from a retention standpoint, if you go in and you're the only one all the time, most people do move on. They say, well, I can, maybe I can get out of the military and I can go somewhere else to be around other like-minded individuals. This book was born out of and to be deliberate and intentional, to be able to give this book away at each accession point for, people of color, to when they get to their first unit, they can see and like, okay, we have flag officers in the Coast Guard. We have people that have, made E9, E8, and they've gone on to do great things afterwards. We have people in the reserves that look like me, talk like me, think like me, that even though I may be, and as a junior person, maybe the only one here, it's not always going to be that way. And we stand on the shoulders of a lot of people that have walked the line in front of us. And now we need to be able to do the same, as we know folks will be coming behind us. So it was a labor of love that was born out of the intent to it's like the Green Book. You remember have you ever heard about the Green Book? People of color used to travel in the South and they couldn't stay at certain places. So we wanted to be deliberate and intentional to say, hey, while you travel this road by yourself and you may be one of two or two of three, that there's excellence that has been out here in the past that will guide you and tell you the things to watch out for and to really make it, very clear that anything is possible. Now, do I identify with being African American or Black? Sure. But actually, in all reality, through meritocracy, I'm the best at what I do. I just so happen to be Black or African American. When they have conversations, it's like, who's the best person for this job? That's what it's trying to really get across.
Thank you so much for that. Can I ask you one question before we start to wrap up? I know you got to jump off and do something amazing. If you were talking to another executive leader, someone who is an executive leader but not as senior yet, I'd like you to answer, what do you think you tell them to start doing, you tell them to stop doing, and you would tell them to continue doing in order to advance in their career? Start, stop, and continue.
What I would say is, start listening more. Stop being the first one to open your mouth, meaning allow people to talk and listen. So start listening and stop talking as much to be an active listener. And then to continue to do is to continue to take care of others. When you get to positions like, of course, results driven, the 5 ECQs, you really want to be impactful from a mission standpoint, whether it's in government, results or, private sector, profit and loss, P&L statements. But at the end of the day, we're in the people business. We're really just leading people and making sure that they have the resources that they need to be the most successful version of who they are. And if folks can really, really, really figure that out, this is not work. It's not hard. It's really, every once in a while you got to make a decision because it's at that level to like be intentional and to really make sure that the organization succeeds. But at the end of the day, it's really about connecting with people and expressing to them what the strategic vision is and the brand to help them then chart their own course. And this gets in, I do have to leave. This gets into like what I talked about a little bit before. If you don't mind, I can transition into that. I think one of the biggest things that we do as leaders, is advocacy. You get to a certain point and you're really just looking for the talent that you can push them or make them think about the possibilities of where they could be if they only did X, Y, Z. So one of the best jobs I had in my last two jobs over at Interior and over at FEMA was, when I saw talent, which someone did with me, I didn't know what it was. Someone did with me, they would have lunch or coffee or see you in the hallway and they'll just offer up, like, have you thought about X? And the person may stand there and be like, oh, I don't know, I got this going on at home and I got kids. Well, hey, think about it. Maybe the Federal Executive Institute. I think you're at that point where you could consider that. Or have you thought about, obtaining your master's or your doctorate degree? Or, are you thinking about the candidate development program? How can you influence others to be the best versions of themselves? And it's really, truly through advocacy. And they may not see it. They may not understand that, folks are working behind the scenes to have those conversations if they see talent. But advocacy is the most important job that we do as executive leaders to make sure that there is a group of people behind or supporting you that can then replace you. One of the things I always tell, folks is when they get to a certain point is that, hey, I won't always be the director. I won't always be the admiral, the general, or, the CEO. So don't put your ego so close to your title or your position. Realize that you are a human being first and that you want to be treated like one. So you should do the same thing to others. Treat people as human as you want to be treated, and you'll be fine. Everything will happen like it's supposed to happen. Some of these jobs that you may have seen me sit in, it wasn't because I was aiming for those jobs. I couldn't have written the book any differently. It's just the opportunities where I was prepared. The opportunities were there. I didn't see them, but somebody saw something in me and they asked me a question. And I said, if not me, then who? Okay, I will interview. I'll put in for a job. In the back of my mind, I got the imposter syndrome. I probably won't make it. But then you get the phone call and you're like, oh, wow, I did it. This is pretty cool. This is pretty cool. So, yeah, this has been great, Alex. I really appreciate the time today.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on, Kevin. And again, everyone, I could not underscore enough the importance of advocacy. We literally just have our most recent book, Unlocking the Executive Advantage, and it talks about just how important it is to have an advocate and be an advocate, and how do you go about identifying those individuals and becoming one yourself. So this is something that again, if you want to really become the best advocate and identify the best advocates for you, that is a resource you need to get. You can get on Amazon, or you can head over to GPS Leadership Solutions and get a digital copy at actually no cost. We're doing for the next month. We're doing that for no cost, just because we want to share the message as much as possible in helping to develop these truly amazing leaders that we can have around us. So again, Kevin, thank you so much for being here today. We appreciate everything you've shared. Everyone, if you took anything from this episode, please don't keep it to yourself. Don't look back, reach back, click the like button, click the share, comment below. Let us know what you felt was the strongest, that big tidbit that you took from the day and you want to employ into your life, and you're going to change the world around you. And as always, I encourage everyone, stay strong, stay positive, definitely stay moving. See ya. Thanks for listening to The Executive Appeal with Alex Tremble. I invite you to follow The Executive Appeal wherever you listen to podcasts. Follow me, your host, Alex Tremble, across all socials or via email for exclusive webinars, courses, and speaking engagements on continued topics of executive leadership. So until next time, stay strong, stay positive, and definitely stay moving.